Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. And the first thing to do is say congratulations, Bruce, on your wedding just this last weekend. I hope it all went well, and you've plainly survived.
I have indeed survived, and I've recovered from my illness as well. So I'm back on deck, all guns blazing.
Excellent. Congratulations, mate. And I copped her. Yeah, we can see you now, unless that's a still. No, he's moving. So it's a very good still. Have you got any audio there this time?
I don't know, have I?
Perfect. There, Dylan is there in all his glory. So we're all here, but we're going to start with Bobby Watts. The reason we're going to start with Bobby is he's actually working and in a hurry. So I see you, Bobby, have been testing a HearLink, and the HearLink had a bit of good news today. It's now FCC certified and all those other good things. So tell us your experience. What do you think? Of course, Ian's the other person's got one. So
yeah, so I got it here, and I feel like it's a total game changer for that whole Pixhawk Cube, whatever you want to call it. It's a total game changer for that infrastructure, because basically before this, if you wanted to go fly with a Cube aircraft or something, you had to have a separate radio and a laptop with a comm and a video transmitter and everything, or you had to have like one of the nice like Desert Rotor like Pelican cases with the ground station, everything integrated. So this is kind of like the first device that I would say that's come along for either like prosumers or guys out in the field doing inspections or LiDAR scanning or cinematography or whatever it might be. They're like everything's in one. So it's RC, data link, video link, all in and a tablet all in one. So it's really impressive. I can't believe it. On the first shot, it's very good, very, very good.
Range, cost, so duration of the battery life in the thing.
Yeah. So cost, I believe it's like $800 US. So cost is not bad at all, considering like people don't like it, but like a DJI, for example, Lightbridge would be about, I think it's about $1,200, $1,000, so a little cheaper than Lightbridge. Range, I have only seen the I forget his name, Matt RC, on YouTube. That
never heard of him. Never heard of him.
Never heard of him. I think so. So I've seen some of his videos. And so I believe it was out to like 5 miles or maybe even 10 miles or something like that. Something quite good. At my field, if I go any further than about 1,500 feet or so, I'm starting to overfly people. So at this moment, haven't had a good chance to test range. But I have seen that the video with horrible antenna placement at above high voltage transmission lines, rated around 1,500 feet, I was getting a little bit of breakup on the video. So that's quite good. If I were to put antennas in a better place, would be and not over high voltage antennas would probably be all right. Battery life, the battery in here seems to last. Let's see, my testing session was probably about 3 or 4 hours, and I was only about halfway through the battery. So battery life is really quite good. Brightness is very good. Brightness is about 1,000 nits, I believe it is. So brightness is solid. The only thing I would say is I'd just like it to be a little bigger. Because when it comes time to like reading like my current, I can read my battery current and battery voltage here, and with sunglasses on, and it's a little small. So if the whole thing grew a little bit, maybe in like a next iteration or another model, that could be like a bigger version. It's really good, really, really good.
Well, I'll test it. Ian, your man you mentioned, your long range test is in the chat. It's the man with the star on the shirt. That's Ian now. That's the very man.
Oh, no way. Okay, I watched your videos. Thank you.
Yeah, it is a great bit of kit. The point you made at the start is bang on. Whilst the self-build community always says, oh, we don't need all the integration, the reality is that's what we all hunger for, trying to put everything together to give us, analog video is over. From a aerial photography platform, analog video is dead. At the end of the day, it's not the way forward. And it allows us to do things that we've dreamed of with Pixhawk and the Cube, and it just creates an integrated solution. And I'll get it in now for Ian, who isn't here. We just need a gimbal. We just need a gimbal. If you're listening, Philip, where are you? Gimbal.
Philip's supposed to be joining tonight. We might be able to twist his arm for something out of that. We'll see. He is at a something, doing a something with a something and a someone. So we'll see. We'll see if he joins. We'll see. So really, then that is probably your integrator's dream. That's your job done. It's going to make you only build cube stuff now.
Yeah, it's seriously considered. It's changed the game. I mean, before this, I can't. My biggest thing is like, if most of the professional drone service companies I know, they're out there riding in like a Suburban or a car or a truck, and they're hitting like multiple sites a day. And I just can't ask them to have like a RC radio with a laptop and a data link and a table and a generator. Like I can't ask that of them. But now this is like the first thing that's really come along that's like, okay, this is reasonable and we can do this now. So it's really changed my perspective. I think if we could, I didn't see too many bugs, but I saw some things that maybe would be nice to change. Like, for example, when you arm and disarm, there's a swipe sort of button. And then if you've got a mission loaded in here as well, it's the same swipe to take off. So when you land, you hold the throttle down and then swipe over to disarm. But if the menu pops up, it could say swipe over to start mission. So like you could think you're on the ground getting ready to disarm, and then if the menu pops up to say start mission, it could take off again and do its thing. So just little things like that. But I haven't had any bugs, nothing. The update process was a major pain. I don't know what else to say other than that. I'm a mechanical engineer, so like through computer I could do fine, and had to read about 4 or 5 different forums and YouTube videos and stuff to get around that. So if they can make the update process a little better for the average customer, I think that would be just fine. But that's my only complaint so far. It's really good.
But I think they're beta units at the moment, aren't they? Or beta, if they're in America.
It's a beta unit. So maybe in production, I would assume that you just plug it in and it's ready to go. And then I saw a question in the chat too. Yes, it's Android based. So inside, and it's like a phone. So when you go into the programs and calibrate the sticks and such, you can tell. I mean, it's got a dial pad and everything. So it's pretty interesting. But for, like I said, for first shot, like, hardware is spot on. It feels good in your hands. It's nice.
Does that have HDMI out? And what can you do HDMI wise on the camera on the transmit end?
So they've got 2 HDMIs, HDMI ins, and then I guess I should have had it fired up to a drone. So you can see your video. So we've just been using GoPros as an FPV camera. So you can input 2 HDMIs and then toggle in between your video sources here. But there is no HDMI out on this side, but they do give you the ability to stream to a server. Ian, is that right? Is that what you saw?
Yeah, they can. You'll be able to stream to a server over Wi-Fi, and Android Cast will be there as well. Now, the unit I had has actually gone back because it was on loan to me. I need to actually. I basically just got to buy mine now. I was very kindly loaned one very early on, and yeah. There's a few people who've said that it needs HDMI. There is always a compromise with these things in any product when it is the first version of it. There's a lot of things we all could say I wish it had, but at the end of the day, it ticks probably 9 out of 10 boxes as it is today. It isn't perfect, but no solution is. HDMI, the casting will solve that, because you'll be able to stream it to Mission Planner as well. They're working on some stuff around that, I believe, too. So. Yeah,
agreed. I think that would be. I think that would definitely be on the wish list. The other thing that I wasn't able to figure out was that the Wi-Fi on here apparently only has like a 5G. It can only read like a 5G network. And then when I was out in the field, I couldn't tether to my iPhone. So out in the field, I was unable to get Wi-Fi, which is a huge setback. I would consider that a pretty big deal. So. I don't know a workaround of that, maybe another hotspot or something, but at the moment I wasn't able to figure that one out.
I'm thinking I might know the reason for that. I just need to check something in my head before I open my mouth. It's not a failing of the unit. There are some quirks around the licensing band with Android and 5 gig Wi-Fi, if I remember, because other products come up against the same issues. But I'll have to double check.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but overall, like I said, I can't even stress it enough. It's the only thing that's come along that's like, okay, this is doable.
Yeah.
You know, like if you use a cube now with a normal carrier board, like a Mach power unit, and this, you are getting into a very nice, not plug and play, but you're way closer than it used to be with reading the pinouts from, you know, a 2-year-old post with 1,000 posts throughout the chain to kind of figure it out, you know. So it's getting there. It's absolutely getting there. So I'm just shocked. Like, first crack at it, it's really good. The hardware wise is really good. So if the firmware comes along and you know, just gets rid of those few little weird things that I'm seeing, it's actually I'm really not even seeing that many. It's just mainly that arm disarm that I'm seeing that makes me a little uncomfortable.
I believe the plan is for Solex to come along to it as well. That was the plan at some point, and that should open the doors up massively as well. Philip can confirm that later. That was always the plan. I haven't bugged him on that on his forum for a while, but that was a long term. I think the biggest benefit is for system integrators. It's not so much the hobby guys. Yeah. It's actually, up till now, the system integrators have always had to use a Taranis or something else with analog videos. For you guys who do what you do, it actually allows you to deliver a professional platform now out the box, fairly straightforward.
Yep, absolutely. And without this, you have no chance. The only thing I guess I'd like to point out too is that it outputs S-Bus too. So even if you're not using it on a cube or something, you would still be able to control a radio controlled aircraft with S-Bus and having HDMI video. So if you were to use this on I don't know, like a robot, or I mean pretty much anything where you have like integrated video with S-Bus that you can control, I mean, that's pretty cool to have that ability. So even if you're not plugging into the cube, or is it the Pixhawk 2.1 or is it the cube?
It's the cube. It's the cube now. Numbers are being dropped.
Because when you buy it, it says Pixhawk 2.1.
Yeah,
it should be the cube now. Well, where's Philip? He's not here to defend.
We're not here to abuse him on it. Yeah, it's the. I like to use the old Prince analogy. It's the cube, the cube formerly known as the Pixhawk 2.1. Yeah, they dropped the Pixhawk name roughly. Technically, Philip's gone their own way with it now, and it's no longer part of the Pixhawk line. I think it's probably a very complex and convoluted hole to end up down.
The trouble is, each person was jumping in with a higher number, so we were very quickly having Pixhawk 99.
Yes,
and then it was meaningless. It was, you know, there were some of the higher number Pixhawks were lower spec than you know, so the numbering thing just got out of hand. Is the bottom line. That's another way of putting it. I think Ian.
Yeah, and he's right. You know, it's S-Bus and it's Mavlink. So technically, any product that supports S-Bus and Mavlink, it will work with, no matter if it's a flight controller. I've actually used it on a gimbal. I've used it on a DJI Ronin S with a GH5, transmitting video, camera, and controlling the gimbal with it as well. You know, it's capable of many things.
Yeah, it's good with the tilt, the scroll wheel right here, to be able to control tilt. Yeah, I'm just super impressed. So the only other thing that threw me for a wrench in the works, and if Philip was here, he might be able to answer it, was the Here 2, you know, the compass for GPS. They recently started shipping with a CAN port cable on it. And so now I'm setting up everything through CAN, which is a completely different avenue than it was with just the standard GPS connection. So that with this at the same time has been like a little bit of a learning curve here. But other than that, that's really been about it. I've been having some good flights with it. I probably have, I don't know, maybe like a few hours worth of airtime on it, and it's been really good. It's been really good.
And your the large birds that you have there.
Yeah, and that's one of our big ones. So flying at 55 pounds. So just aircraft with like 20 or 30 pound dummy weights on it, and it's flying really good. So no complaints.
Excellent. No, good stuff. Well, I mean, if that's it, and if you really have got to get on, and that's what you wanted to say, then we better let you on.
Yeah. No. It's been really good. And I put up a little like vlog if people want to check out my YouTube page or LinkedIn page or whatever. Just kind of showing it in action, showing it doing its thing. So people want to look it up, they can just type my name in, Bobby Watts, and look at the most recent video.
And I quite enjoy your podcast as well. Now, I enjoyed that the other day, listening to that. So that can also be found from your LinkedIn page, I would suggest.
Yeah, thank you. That was, man, Jeff's a smart guy talking about like cybersecurity and such, and how hackers are using drones. It's wild. I didn't know any of that stuff. So that was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he's a nice guy.
Yeah,
He's despite what they say about him, he's a nice bloke.
no, he's good. He's awesome.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, we'll let you go. Please stick around if you will, but we'll let you go.
I'll be listening, but I gotta hop on some calls and wrench and some other stuff. But I do appreciate you having me on, and we'll have to come back in.
Perfect, man. All right, Bobby Watts on LinkedIn is where you need to find all those things. Look after yourself. We'll speak to you again soon, man.
Hey,
Take care.
I really appreciate it.
Cheers, bye-bye. Now, before we start the rantathon, because people in the comments are waiting for the rantathon, let's get Nicola in. Nicola, what have you got to tell us? Tell me what you told us.
Hey, well, I have had quite an interesting weekend and quite an interesting day flying with the DJI camera on various planes. And I did upload a short clip from my flight with the Talon GT, no less, with the DJI camera on it. No gimbal, no nothing, just the camera and its stabilization. And I have to say, that is awesome. I haven't had any experience with the GoPro 7 because I don't have one. But this camera seriously impressed me because it also adds stabilization on the raw axis. I'm not sure if that's digital or if they rotate the sensor in some way, but performance was pretty impressive. And today I flew it on my XUAV Clouds mounted on the Feiyutech gimbal, and I do have to say, like, a word out to Feiyutech, you guys suck, because these gimbals are absolutely unbelievable and you stop making them. You guys are bloody wankers, like, seriously. Yeah, sorry, but that's a fact, and I think a lot of other people think that, because it's ridiculous. I've flown with the Firefly 8SE last time on that plane, and that camera weighs 60-70 grams. The DJI camera is at least 20 or 30 grams heavier, and then in order to balance it, I added another 40 or 45 grams of lead to the gimbal, and it still worked. The gimbal still worked absolutely perfectly. So yeah, Feiyutech, if you have any chance of seeing this, please bring those gimbals back, because some of us desperately need an option. But anyway, so pairing the gimbal with the DJI camera with its stabilization on yielded some absolutely outstanding results, something I've never seen on a plane. Oh man, video so smooth. It's and yet there's that natural motion of the gimbal and the plane and the camera, so it's not as sterile as from the DJI copters, and it's at an altitude that you wouldn't expect to see one of those as well. So yeah, you might get the idea. And I did want to play a short clip, so I'm just gonna share my screen here so you can see that, and I hope most of you will be able to see that. It is absolutely outstanding, because I've flown for years long-range FPV, gimbals, cameras, whatever. I have never seen video this smooth from a plane. For me, this is absolutely stunning. And the most amazing thing is the sensor of the camera is pretty outstanding, because even in the distance here, you can see so much detail that you can't on other cameras that I have. Like, yes, I don't have a GoPro 7, but that's besides the point. This is outstanding, and the smoothness of it is even more impressive, because you actually, rather than see a jerking and jumping image, you can actually focus on different bits of it and actually see detail in there. So yeah, I'm personally pretty impressed by this camera with the combination with the gimbal. It's pretty amazing, and I think I'm going to be using it quite a lot in the future.
That's your go-to camera.
Well, at least until I lose it.
Well, it's funny enough, I've been sent something. Have you found your plane? Have you found that plane yet?
No, not yet. But a
What?
friend of mine did suggest that we go up the mountain, because there's no snow up there now, and look for it. But I'm not going to be able to I wasn't able to do it last weekend. I'm not going to be able to do it this coming weekend, but perhaps next week, one of the work days, we might just head up there and try and see what's the deal there.
And have you unboxed that detail yet? Come on, hurry up and get that detail.
No, but I can show you the box. It's still in it.
Oh, open the box. Open the box now.
No, yeah, I haven't even opened it to see what's inside.
I've been sent something to review, and I'm going to take it out of its rubber protection now, as something Bruce said on the weekend. And that's this little tracky-mo thing. This is what you needed. You needed one of these.
Yeah.
Give me a very, very dull review, because so far my observations are it works. So there we are then. So it works.
Actually, a friend of mine got one tracker from a company somewhere in the US. I think it cost around $150, and it's got an international SIM card on it. So
exactly
basically,
what it's got.
is that the one?
Probably. Yeah.
And actually, he said he got it. He said he threw it at the ground a few times, threw it at the wall. It didn't break. It didn't stop working. So, at some point it might be worth it. But given where I crashed, I have real doubts if the plane's sitting in that area, because other people have lost planes in that general vicinity. It's not just me. But flying up there is something of a the equivalent of a walk in the park.
Is this the Bermuda Triangle you're flying in?
Yeah.
The Bulgarian.
No,
Bulgaria.
but regardless of how high it looks, that's just the effect from the lens. It's just, yeah, it seems higher than it is. That's about 150 meters off the ground. Don't be fooled by the
Yes.
Yeah. You get it.
Foggy. And at the bottom of the park, wouldn't it? It was just at the bottom of the park that you fly from.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing is, you don't always have mobile network reception around these parts there, especially if it lands in a ditch somewhere between all these trees. It's very unlikely you're going to have reception to send any sort of signal. So he's been working on, I think I've mentioned it before, like a tracking module with sort of a beacon using one of these LoRa modules.
Yeah, well, if we were playing with a LoRa, that Patrick said in the comments, start with the belly aching. I think he's probably right. He's probably right. So we did a test yesterday with some LoRa modules, 40 kilometers, got to do 50. Anyway, blah 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 with added blah. Before we go to the belly aching, so Nicola, well, let's head to the belly aching now. But let's first of all congratulate Richard for two things. Thing number A is taking over Americas and sorting out their remote ID for them. You have partnered with a company that's in goes with their remote ID stuff, I think, haven't you? I didn't put that very well, did I? So congratulations. I'll let you tidy that up in a minute. And thanks very much for writing a letter to the BBC. Over to you, Richard, to tidy up what I didn't say correctly there.
Thank you, Gary. No, great. So yeah, I think the piece you're referring to was the announcement we made with Pierce Aerospace earlier this week. We're really pleased to be partnering with those guys and their flight portal ID, kind of remote ID solution. So I would say watch this space over the next couple of weeks as Pierce and AA's technologies come together to offer a useful solution to remote ID.
Oh, come on, you can tell us a bit more than that, because we've been discussing, especially Ian and I, and especially the European piece. The European piece says that it's got to be usable technology now. So to us, it's one of two things then. It's either it's got to be Wi-Fi or it's got to be just straight electronic via your smartphone or device. Could you see a future like that?
I can see a future using usable technologies that are available today and putting them together into a useful solution. That's what I can see coming up very soon. And I will be here just to tell you all about it when we announce it.
That's the political answer. Because, you know, me and Gary have discussed this in great length a couple of times on and off here. And my interpretation of those EU regulations are that it should be able to be received by an existing device. And I read that as no additional hardware. Now, that's open to interpretation. Does that mean that the aircraft would have to have a SIM card and transmit back via the internet? Or are we talking something like a Wi-Fi, where the device can literally just pick up the radio signal via the existing 2.4 gig or 5 gig system and produce an ID from there? And it's interesting that the EU interpretation says existing devices, and that's the bit that's sort of intrigued us on this.
Yeah, I think you raise a really good point. I think at Altitude Angel, you know, our job is to create the operating system platform that enables other people to plug in their technical solutions. So you will have some folks who will use our platform with kind of bolt-on trackers. You'll have other folks who are looking at the kind of network ID side of things and will use that technology. The point from our perspective is that the platform effectively needs to be implementation agnostic, so people can choose or people have to use certain technology depending on the region that they're in. So again, you know, I think you've seen a lot of solutions today that focus on kind of broadcast ID. And we've seen solutions that do that over ADSB. We've seen solutions that do that over Wi-Fi. And I'm honestly not sure which is the right solution. Perhaps the right solution will vary depending on location and use case. And then we've also seen remote ID style solutions as well. And again, what we're doing here is in working with Pierce is to incorporate their flight portal ID technology into our platform so that customers can choose to use our UTM system and the UTM technologies that we provide with the system provided by Pierce. So I think, you know, over the next couple of weeks to a month, you should see some more announcements about our plans together. You know, our job here is to really work closely with Pierce, but also support Pierce in their product rollout. So we can't steal the limelight from Pierce.
I think
whatever.
My only concern with the whole thing, especially with the cellular based, for instance, is the cost for the user. You know, at the end of the day, if we're going to have a cellular model where everyone has to have some form of dongle, or, you know, for existing drones, a dongle or anything that off the shelf that's built to support this will need a SIM card or something, there's cost implications for that for the user, because at the end of the day, network transmission isn't free. Data costs money. I can understand it for the larger commercial operator, but then again, we're heading towards fins and far more complex subjects when we get down that road. But it'll be interesting to see which solution, because if it isn't going to be one solution, it then adds complexity, doesn't it?
Isn't fins the same thing, really?
Well, yeah.
Richard, are you going to be working with Kazaa? Have released the API for their thing, so anyone can build an app basically for the Kazaa system. Are you guys working with Kazaa on that? Are you going to have something integrates into that system?
So we certainly have a lot of discussions with Kazaa. At the moment, we don't have any plans to build anything specifically for Kazaa, but one of the interesting developments that we're looking to wait for is the service that our customers most often request of us, is the ability to effectively, as a commercial drone operator, use our platform to request permission to fly in controlled airspace in whatever country they're in, but they can do that with altitude angel in a kind of country agnostic way. So a good example there is, here in the UK at the moment, we're doing the AUP evaluation with NATS. The next step of that is to connect that to an open API that anybody can use. So we will, at Altitude Angel, we'll integrate that into our products. So our commercial operators and our developer customers, hardware manufacturers can get access to the airspace there. But equally, that same system is now going to be connecting into the Lance system as well. So again, it will be an agnostic wrapper around these country-specific implementations. I think that's one of the goals, certainly one of the design objectives we have, is to kind of abstract our users and our customers away from the complexities that are developing within different airspace systems around the world. So again, when it comes to remote ID, I think the point there is no one really knows what it's going to be. It would be nice if there was some agreement on protocol, but effectively at the end of the day, from a software perspective, we're talking about managing numbers and being able to assign those numbers to people and places and locations. So it's not a complex software problem to solve. Where a lot of people get hung up is on precisely who is going to be tracked in the airspace and what those regulations are going to be and what those requirements on them are going to be. Do they have to go out and purchase hardware, et cetera, et cetera. And then also the interchange of that registration data. So if it's a big national registry, people tend to be slightly less concerned than if it's kind of a devolved system that's federated with hundreds of different companies maintaining registration. It all gets very complicated at that point. So again, our goal is to just continue supporting companies who we think have a great approach and great solutions that solve problems for our customers, both now and in the future, and then also just to continue working on those open standards that we hope will move the market forwards more quickly.
There is a GPDR issue in this as well, as you were talking about with the data among, and it is interesting because we're talking about transmitting lots of data, or at least having data available. Yet there's also quite a heavy GPDR aspect within the EU as well. So yeah, it is complex.
The registration sharing information is, as you say, is a really complex issue, and it goes way beyond GDPR. Obviously, the EU is very, very focused on GDPR, but different countries have different requirements around which locations you can store data about their citizens in, et cetera, et cetera. So if you have one big global cloud platform, which is the traditional way that lots of technology companies try and fix this kind of problem, then you have a problem as the cloud platform provider unless you have a way to segregate that data. But the kind of registration technology that we've been building, again, our goal is not to be a registrar, but is to provide the technologies to help other people to establish those registries. Effectively enables different UTM companies to exchange operator information only when there's a request made from someone who's legitimately there to do it. So that satisfies a key requirement in GDPR that firstly, when you want to share information, you have to have a legitimate need for it. And then secondly, what happens is rather than the exchange of information actually taking place between two UTM companies, the requesting UTM company effectively is redirected to the originating UTM company's servers to get that information. So actually, the customer information never leaves the owning UTM. So that enables a kind of federated system of collaboration to approach, but the ownership still lies with the company that took responsibility for registering the company. And again, I think one of our strong views is that operator-related information belongs in the hands of the operator, and it should be owned and maintained by the operator. And that control is lost potentially if you have copies of that information flying around, no pun intended, in different UTM systems all around the world.
Top marks, good answer as ever. It's always good answers from you, Rich. Always good answers. Shall we shuffle it over to the more contentious subject?
What would that be, Gary?
Sorry.
What would that be?
Well, which one? Which one in particular? Where shall we start? What about the good professors? Well, why don't we let Dylan kick the ball there? And I copped her. Thank you very much for joining us. Why don't you start off with some contentious thing?
Oh, again, where to start? It's just been weeks of contentious issues, all of it. Number one, has anyone else come across the 3 Cs terminology?
Patrick, in our comments, who's my helper in America, it came from America. Yeah. It was their idea, and Well, what do we think? Well, have we drawn a line under Andy? Have we drawn a line under that now? Are we letting him move on, or are we still...
I would draw a line. I think it's okay coming out and apologizing profusely after the fact, which is very easy for everything to do. And I do it with my wife constantly. And it makes it okay. But occasionally, just occasionally, you do need to break out into the mainstream press and actually explain why you're apologizing. All that came out really was a front page on the Nats Twitter feed, which if you're watching Nats, that's okay. Don't tend to all the time. And within drone forums, which it is very insular and never breaks out. So all you get is the headline somewhere, someone sees it and picks up on it and says, oh, right, yeah, drone pilot, you're all 3 Cs. But there's no... I think it would be an ideal opportunity for them to actually go out and actually try and quash a lot of this drone scare that is out there. I mean, it was again today in the inquiry again today.
We watched it today.
Yeah,
look at it today.
Again today. He's saying, you know, one of the members of the committee was saying, well, how do we get out and tell the public how bad drones are? Because I'm afraid they don't know. And I think that's what, you know, everyone, wherever you stand in the drone community, whether you're a commercial operator, a recreational flyer, whatever, you're up against that really, where I get emails from people and Twitter messages and Instagram messages constantly saying, I've been too scared to go out and fly my drone in the last 3 months.
It's sad. It really is sad.
And that's what we're up against. And these are the people that are actually funding the R&D because they're buying the consumer product, and that gives the cash flow in to make these strides forward, which I think, you know, the feeling I get from, you know, the messages I get on my channel is that, you know, it's like the drone registration fee. It's £16.50. It's only £16.50. Again, politicians are saying today, you know, it's only £16.50. Why should, you know, anyone else pay for your enjoyment? Well, what are you getting for your £16.50? Apart from what I can see between the lines now is it's actually there to pay for all this, the extra bodies that CAA are going to need to, you know, integrate everything else into it. It's not just registration.
Well, I thought today, one of the things many things that really annoyed me today, but one of the things was that professor was going on about, what about all the airprox sightings that haven't been reported? It doesn't mean they didn't happen.
Yeah.
They might, what? I can't. Bruce will think of some clever analogy, but because nobody saw something happen, something must have happened, was my sort of take on it.
It's like the fridge light, right? How do you know the fridge light actually goes off?
It's Schrodinger's cat, isn't it? It's
what, Schrodinger's cat's putting the fridge light on and off?
No, not Schrodinger. No. Yeah, Dylan makes a good point with Nat. Hello, Dylan. By the way, very nice to see you, my friend. Yeah, you know, Andy's ones, I think they apologise. What probably pissed everyone off was they did it behind closed doors, first of all. They then half did it in public. And then in the end, they put it on the blog. At the end of the day, he's apologised. They're still to a point trying to do some good stuff for the drone industry, Nats are, especially for commercial operators, because they're trying to align all of the airfields to allow us access within the FRZs, because we've got guys who are being turned down on a daily basis who are trying to earn money, who cannot get access to FRZs when they have full permission to do so within the law, yet the airports are saying, no, we're not doing it because you're a risk. Then we had the select committee thing with Balpa pushing their constant nonsense, which is, you know, we're on the side of drones, but they're quite dangerous, you know, and you want to be careful. And then the BBC, well, where the hell do we start with that? Because, okay, you know, a big hand clap to Altitude Angel for stepping in, as Philip has, as, you know, we've never had what we've seen in the last 2 weeks. Pretty much every big player in the drone industry has come out against the BBC. That is fundamental. That is fundamentally different to anything we've had before. It really is. Let me silence that.
Yeah, that is a positive takeaway of the last week. That you know, moving forward as an industry, be we model aircraft flyers, FPV flyers, or commercial operators, we're going to have to jump up and down a little bit and say, hang on a minute, and put things straight when they need to be put straight. So say, well done, Richard, to DJI, to BMFA, to FPV UK, everyone that did that. I'm a little bit dismayed that I'm seeing in comments people saying, well, the BBC won't listen, they won't care. What does it matter? You know, then we just roll over and do nothing in every circumstance. Is that the way the world should work?
Am I the only one who thinks that was a really good documentary and presented its points very well? And people are just not listening. These things, it's only a matter of time. Hands up, my hat's off to the BBC. I think it was fantastic.
It's even better now, Bruce. They've put the clip out on YouTube, so you can actually see it in all its glory with a front screenshot of him with a rifle and a drone in shot. Which how's that happening?
The shocking thing is they have the audacity to list this under BBC Science. I lost my crap over that middle of the week. That I nearly threw something through my screen when I saw that. Sitting next to David Attenborough and Professor Brian Cox, they have that bloody program sitting there as science, and it's just ridiculous. It's nonsense. You know, it's hopefully Philip put a good statement out today looking at the technical aspects of what they've done around this test. And my whole argument, and I did a video on this in the week and I ranted on that, and my whole argument is, when you take that test, we fired that thing at it. When it was the bird one, it was all very happy clappy, no fear, no nothing. Oh, let's fire a bit of gel at this and that's fine. The second they fired the aircraft, which was rigged with carbon rods or graphite rods, shaped into the size of a missile, fired at an existing wing which had already had damage, the first words were, oh, is this ballistic glass? The tone of it was done in such a way to cause you to think, you know what, this is dangerous. This is bad. And he walks out the building afterwards and said, this would make me think twice about getting on an aircraft. The whole show was aimed to do nothing but push anti-drone agenda and promote the anti-drone industry. It's as simple as that. Sorry. That's my rant.
Well, we'll leave that there. Well, a moment of silence for that rant. It's all nonsense. And the stuff that happened today. Richard, now, which one of our enemies were you on the committee with? I can't remember. Were you there with the Balpa guy? I can't remember who you were there with.
No, I was there with Annalise from ARPAS UK. And I was also there with Tim Johnson from the CAA.
That's right. Yeah, well, you were on the easy shift, weren't you? That's right.
Yeah, I did have it a little bit easier than Brendan from DJI directly after me. That's for sure.
That's right. That's it. And like the young lady that was there today, unfortunately, our team, as it were, if I dare say that sort of thing, were being super polite to that professor and letting him get a word in edgeways, or rather, he was just stamping on top of everyone.
Did anyone else get an invite? What was the criteria for an invitation?
Our invitation turned up completely out of the blue, so I don't know what the criteria is, but we were lucky enough to be invited. I think maybe it was off the back of the CAA innovation group work that we've been doing. I, like you, am a little bit shocked at the things I've been reading today. I haven't actually had a chance to watch Professor Dunn, I think it was.
It's a good watch. It's a good watch.
But I may end up a little bit irate, I suspect, based on some of the comments I've read. And actually, one of the things I would encourage anyone to do if they're interested is anybody can submit written evidence to those committees. So if you have an issue with something that you've seen or you've heard, you can enter into the public record your comments. And that's exactly what we did, even though we weren't part of the DJI session effectively directly after us. We sat in the gallery and some of the members were making comments that were absolutely incorrect. So we decided to make a correction in the public record. If you have something to say, then say it. It gets logged. It takes about 2 weeks for them to do it, but they do enter it into the public record.
So do you feel? Don't answer this if you don't want to, but because I thought the professor danced around the truth so much that he would surely worry about legal implications. If you said some porky pies there, which I'm sure you didn't, were there legal implications for saying porky pies there, Richard?
I would need to check check the guidance that I was given, but there is a particular type of privilege given to participants in the committees, which effectively, I believe, suggests that you can say pretty much whatever you like, and it sort of doesn't come back and get you. But there is a kind of a guide at the bottom that says, please don't abuse this. So I think it's really sad that people would go with a particular commercial agenda or a particular message. You know, you're invited there to be an expert, and you know, I was pretty well honoured to go and represent, you know, a small part of our industry, and I took that responsibility really seriously. I was just really quite shocked to see some of the members' comments that were coming at me. They were obviously coming out from a position of very little education on the topic, which is fine. That's what we're there to do as experts, is to try and educate them. But Professor Dunn and some of the comments I've read today, I'm a little bit disappointed to see that was the kind of tone that appears to have been taken. You know, you have an opportunity to provide education not just to the members in front of you, but to the wider public. And it doesn't sound like the education that people have been getting today has been as unbiased and as factual as it could have been.
Oh, it was nonsense.
Sorry, I read a quote that's really quite upset me, because it talks about likening this to the next Hindenburg. I think, you know,
yes.
They risk a Hindenburg moment. Well, I looked at the Hindenburg moment, and that was a docking incident with a naval station mast and a vehicle that was predominantly filled with explosive gas. Not a lot like most drones that fly around today, I think it's fair to say.
Yes.
So I think, you know, again, this is not the kind of charged language that helps quantify the problems that we face. You know, drones are a challenge for regulators. They're a challenge for security, as is absolutely any technology. As, for example, as we put in our letter to the BBC. But that kind of rhetoric doesn't help understand the risks, and it certainly doesn't help mitigate them. And I think that's we as an industry, and I think as has been pointing out on the chat tonight, you know, we all came together with slightly different viewpoints actually, but around a common point here, which was actually these things are mostly good. And there is a very, very small percentage of people, as there would be with absolutely any new technology or even existing technology, cars, for instance, that use them to do dangerous things. That doesn't mean we ban those things. If it did, we probably wouldn't have any things in our lives that were any good at anything else. So I think, you know, it was really great to see the industry rally around it, but we really need to be louder at promoting the good stories that come out and the great work that everyone's doing with drones. I think a very little known fact is that, you know, public services themselves, public sector councils, you know, you've got local governments, you've got infrastructure inspections, etc., that can go on at so much lower cost to the general public, and also lower risk to the people who are employed by the council to do those jobs, that we could save so much money as an industry, as a country. We're kind of in that kind of time here in the UK, right, where we've got to start looking at the public finances with a little bit more scrutiny than we otherwise would. So, you know, we should be looking at drones for the opportunity they give us, and then we should be looking to understand those risks in an unbiased fashion. And that hasn't been happening.
So where do you think this is all coming from then, Rich?
Honestly, I try and reflect on some of the comments that I see, and I wonder. I think a reasonable portion of a lot of these comments that you see are born out of complete ignorance. You've got people who just don't understand the things that they're talking about, purporting to be experts. That happens in every field. You know, I've run a UTM company now for 5 years, but I will still be one of the first people to tell you, I don't think there is a really internationally agreed definition of what a UTM company is yet, and what UTM is to different people. So I get really irate when I see UTM experts cropping up telling everyone what's happening. I think that's one good example. I think another example is there are folks who do have agendas, right? If you are a counter-UAS manufacturer, and I want to be really clear, we support counter-UAS activities, but we don't support a one-sided argument. You know, counter-UAS is an important aspect in de-risking operations in and around sensitive areas. But if you are an anti-drone lobbyist, you're going to use every opportunity you get to push that message. The trouble is, as a pro-drone group that we all are here, and the people that are watching this podcast, we don't do the same very well. You know, we don't get out there and push all the great things that drones can be doing. So I think, you know, we've got to take a bit more responsibility collectively ourselves and try and galvanize ourselves around a few core messages that would be really, really key to push out there. You know, I'm constantly, we get tweets, we get text messages, we get letters and emails from police forces all around the world that use our stuff to help them get in the air and figure out where they can fly more safely. They're always asking us for kind of new features and other things that we can do. You know, we're trying to do, and actually over the next month, you'll see some news coming from us where we're trying to collect some of this information and push it back out there. We've got some other things coming up around trying not to give too much away, but effectively in an analogous way to the way that the aviation industry learns from its mistakes and shares knowledge. We're looking to try and achieve some of that on behalf of the UTM and the UAV industry as a whole as well, to try and combat with stats and with numbers and with facts and with figures some of the rhetoric that you do see. And again, that's why, you know, when we wrote the letter to the BBC, we tried to stick entirely to the facts, which is why I was really disappointed again with my former beloved BBC. I'm very upset because I used to have BBC News on every day. I loved watching it. I'm actually, you know, completely of the other opinion at the moment. But the BBC published on BBC News a written takedown, effectively, of DJI's response, where they effectively, I think the quote was something along the lines of, the BBC Horizon program repeatedly from the outset quantified the good, or repeated the good use of drones. Now, I rewatched immediately, slightly, admittedly, with a bit of a red mist, the first 15 minutes of that program, and I counted 2 mentions that I would regard, you know, with a neutral hat on, as positive, and I think they were over in a combined 30 seconds, if I'm being generous, and then the rest was just fairly negative or at best neutral. So, you know, for the BBC News, which is a news service, to be quoting from its own stock footage things that are factually wrong, I think is absolutely terrible. And it's the closest I've ever come before to agreeing with something like Donald Trump, where he turns around and says there's fake news. I kind of thinking, I don't know if it's fake, it's just really misinformed, or it's following someone else's agenda. And I think that's really bad. You know, so that's something, fortunately, we hadn't yet filed our written complaint with the BBC. We filed the open letter. We're now going to add the BBC News piece as well into the complaint, because, again, this is the mass media. It's going out to many, many people. And the point that we made was this is damaging the UK's economic interests, because it affects, you know, the viewers, the general population's view of this kind of technology, which we know already is pretty misinformed, right? So to have a 1-hour documentary, I'm going to use that term very loosely, broadcast, which is reinforcing that negative imagery, is really bad. The other point we made there is that the reputational harm that's been done to drone manufacturers, but actually everyone who uses drones, whether you're a pilot delivering vaccines somewhere in Malawi, or you're a police drone pilot helping find a vulnerable missing person, you know, that damage is, you know, as significant as it is incalculable at the moment. So it's a real issue for us that such an amount of money and such an effort was made to push that bad news and that, you know, factually incorrect messaging out there. And then that's before you get to the fabrication, right? I must admit, it was brought to my attention, you know, as we were going through the program. I was sit there, you know, open-mouthed when, you know, I think it was Aldo Kane took a mallet to a Phantom because, you know, it wouldn't fit in his gun, which really upset me, because I'm thinking, well, okay, well, we can pretty much reconfigure any object we like here and fire it at, you know, close to the speed of sound or whatever it is his cannon could do. But it's going to change the impact, right? We said in our letter, we're not impact physicists at all, but you don't have to be an impact physicist. You have to simply be a skeptic with a skeptical mind to be able to look at something and go, well, that's mostly space and it's really light. But to make it fit in the cannon, we've got to reconfigure it, and then we're going to glue it together. And then what we're going to do is, as you can see in the freeze frames in our letter, you know, we're going to stick some rods in there. And I actually contacted DJI to ask them, you know, by the way, we have a lot of DJI products. We have other drones as well, but none of which we would like to take a mallet to find out what's inside it. You know, we like them in their intact configuration. They generally fly better unless you're firing them out of a cannon. we had to ask, do you have these props, these kind of rods in your drones? And the answer was no. So what you're seeing there then is something has been added to this little known impact testing facilities tests to make a point. And that point is, this thing, when it hits, is going to damage the wing. But the point is, it wasn't the drone, was it? This is the worst part of it. And, you know, this was against the backdrop of, this is Britain's next big air disaster. You know, we're going to be flying into commercial airliners, bringing down airlines full of people. That wasn't even a commercial airliner's wing. It wasn't even a new wing. No one knows what condition that wing is in. And the really annoying aspect, I think we can all agree, is we've all paid for this program, and Horizon has the opportunity to add something to the conversation. It could have paid, it could have used that funding to do a proper study. It could have even tried to do a proper study, but it didn't.
That letter was heartfelt, wasn't it, Rich? I can see it actually got you upset.
It was, I have to admit, it was communally written in Altitude Angel. And I have to be honest, you know, there were so many people that felt very strongly about what they'd seen. And Steve Farmer, our head of corporate comms, who signed the letter, you know, hats off to him. He managed to remove a lot of the red rage in a lot of people's comments and try and turn it into something that was, you know, from our perspective, we tried to remove the emotion from the letter, right? And again, we felt that if we went in with rhetoric and we went in with things that we couldn't prove, which is why we cited all of our sources for the statements that we put in, then we're as bad as Horizon at this point, even though we're advocating for a completely different view. The point is, we were trying to add something. You know, we've always said, you know, on this podcast, for example, and in other engagements, if we're going to get involved in something, we're going to try and move it along. We're going to try and be useful. Otherwise, what's the point? Why are we all here? You know, we have to, in this kind of emerging industry, we've got to do something useful, and we've got to work together to combat all the bad news that's out there. Bad things happen. I'm not discounting that, but actually good things happen more often than the bad things. But the bad things are much more interesting to read about generally.
Yeah. Well, let's just jump quickly across to another man who wrote a letter. We'll come back, Rich. Sorry, but Philip's here. Philip's also only here for a couple of minutes. I'm not sure where he is in the world at the moment. But Philip, welcome. We've spoken about the here link. That bit went down well. You'll have to watch the beginning for that. Thank you for writing a letter to the BBC. Which particular bit got you annoyed?
Look, the whole thing got me annoyed, from, you know, shooting it down with a sniper rifle with the risk of random bullets landing on people's heads, and just the continual talk about the counter-UAS stuff, which, well, look, there's some good people in that industry that are trying to do some good stuff, and there are some very valid reasons that various people are trying to do certain things, but the hype and the crap that goes on with that it's just sad. It's really frustrating to see the work of so many people and just being trashed for a little bit of cheap media entertainment, which is basically what this is being used for. I mean, the carbon rods, I mean, come on, that's just, it's just silly. It's just beyond silly. The battery, like, it looked to me like a machined aluminium block. I don't understand why you would need to do something like that. It actually would be really quite entertaining to go out to the Arizona desert and grab one of the airliners out there and shoot some real things at a real airliner, or you know, let's ramp it up a little bit. You know, a BBC willing to fund getting an old defunct airliner actually in the air. We'll put some radio gear in it and an autopilot, and we'll fly it around and smash a whole bunch of drones into the thing, and let's see what really happens. I mean, I'm all for some really good actual impact testing. I think it would be a good thing for the industry. I don't disagree that there are a certain level of risks. That's why we've put ADS-B in our new carrier board that we're putting out. We want to educate people to stay away from aircraft, but you know, fear and bullcrap isn't the way to do it, and it's just unnecessary. This whole fiasco at Gatwick we still don't know if there was a drone or not. Even if there was it necessary to destroy the hopes and dreams of 100,000 people at Christmas? What, for the risk of a dent? I mean, we've all seen the dent that was put in that aircraft in Canada that they have declared to be a drone, even though there still is absolutely no evidence of a drone there either. But even the military helicopter over in the US that actually was hit by a drone, the one real case, which no, I didn't mention, and I got pulled up for that. But the helicopter made a very safe landing. We're not talking about the gloom and doom that this guy is portraying, and the BBC is meant to be the pillar of truth, science. I grew up listening to BBC for fact. I didn't grow up, listening to BBC for this sort of rubbish. It's sad. It actually is really sad.
Yeah, I grew up. That was the Horizon brand was in the 70s. Richard won't remember because he wasn't born, but in the 70s, the Horizon brand was the science program. It was the thing. I took it to be fact, but I can't watch it again now. It's a terrible thing. And I'm surprised.
It's a documentary, right? That's the problem.
It's been what, sir?
It's a mockumentary. I think that's the best way we could describe that. That we really took issue with. You cannot put this in the section of the BBC's website in the documentary section. And Oxford English Dictionary, I think, agrees with us in our definition of the word documentary. And if they can point me to some facts in the Horizon program that we'd all agree are generally facts, then yes, great. But couldn't really find many.
I see you're saying in our comments, internal comments, why don't airliners have dash cams, or why don't all aircraft be fitted with some form of electronic conspicuity like ADS-B, which we can easily get out of the way now? It's actually trivial for DJI aircraft and for aircraft fitted with pixel or cubes. To get out of the way as well. We can get out. That's a trivial thing. I'm a bit lost as to why we're trying to adopt new standards and all. Going off topic, but there's many.
Well, on that topic, I mean, Avionics have put a hell of a lot of effort into first making ADS-B receivers for drones, whether they be DJI, whether they be Arduino based, doesn't matter. They're happy to deal with anyone. And we support that. We absolutely support that. Everyone should have something if they're going to be flying in that sort of area. Drone racers don't need it. They're hanging around between treetop level. If a 747's below treetop level, it's got bigger problems than the drone. So just put the damn ADS-B in your GA aircraft and
be done with it. Yeah,
get out of the way of you. It's not that big a deal.
Yes, and I keep seeing the guy from AOPA in the UK said it's quite important that helicopters at low level see all these drones. No, it's not. It's the last thing you'd want to do is see all the drone traffic on his screen. No. It's the very last thing you'd want to happen.
And most regulators don't want that. Most regulators with common sense. I mean, I might upset a few Australian drone users here when I say that I actually think that the Australian regulator, CASA, is probably one of the few regulators around the world with its head screwed on, other than wanting to charge us $160 to register our drones. Pretty much everything else, they've got their head switched on, and unfortunately that one's not their choice. That was thrown upon them by a silly fear-driven campaign with the government. So
just in the comments, do you need a radio license to transmit ADS-B? Yeah, you do. You actually, it needs to be, all the boxes need to be ticked, and that's why it's so complicated. Philip, you explain how
ADS-B in.
You explain why we would do
transmit. Well, we don't need to transmit. It's our job to stay out of the way of airliners. So airliners transmit. Police helicopter, whatever, it transmits on ADS-B. It transmits its position, its velocity, all its various heading, whatever information we actually need. And we use that information and we set up a perimeter around the aircraft. By default, our cubes will come set to basically just warn the pilot, and then you can change the parameter from warn to avoid if you'd like to, and it will actively then get the hell out of the way of anything that comes towards it. It's really simple. Now, when we start talking about whether or not we're going to be avoiding hitting Amazon drones, then we start getting a bit more of a complex airspace management system. But that's drone versus drone. It's a completely different topic.
Absolutely. I see Simon Dale is in the comments. I'm going to scroll back up to where he said, he also raised the point that diverting aircraft en masse, like they did at Gatwick, may present more of a risk than a potential drone strike. So,
well, I mean, that's actually quite simple to quantify. How many people have died from drone strikes or drones? Nil. Air traffic control incidents.
How many airliners hit each other today somewhere in Europe taxiing? 2, wasn't it? Was it EasyJet and I don't know. Anyway, there was an on the ground taxiing incident.
Yeah.
And the annoying thing with that is that'll be clocked off as a ground incident. That won't get into the stats as a hit because it was on the ground. But anyway.
Something I was just going to say, Gary. What really concerns me, not just the fact they made the program, but you have now had some of the industry's biggest players raise public complaints, and the BBC are basically ignoring it. Now, when one guy complains about Jeremy Clarkson on Top Gear, when he was on that or something, all hell broke loose. Yet, when you have the likes of Philip, Altitude Angel, DJI, FPV UK, BFMA, these are the biggest players in our industry, and the BBC are just trying going, no, we don't care. We don't care. And that's what's scary. That's scary to me. That is.
So then how do you get everyone's voice speaking the same volume in the same direction? Because at the moment we've got lots of different organizations and even more springing up after the inquiries and the BBC thing last week as well. I see, sitting on the semicircle bit and having seen inside some of these organizations as well, we're talking people have got like a screwdriver there that's doing that job, and that screwdriver is doing that job, and we all use the screwdriver in slightly different ways. But how, and taking Richard's point, how do you move forward and actually all come together and actually be a force to reckon with? We
need a big protest picnic outside Heathrow.
Exactly. That's a perfect thing to do. But I think with Richard and Philip and the others beginning to write letters, perhaps that's what we're beginning. Perhaps we're beginning to see more.
I actually think we're probably heading about this the wrong way. I actually, rather than writing letters and doing too much complaining, why don't we approach people like, good old Colin Gwynn and a few other media savvy people, and why don't we make our own documentary? Obviously we'll be accused of being completely biased, etc., but, surely with enough of us, we can convince someone to fund something that would allow us to actually throw some real drones at real gas turbines. And you can buy a decent gas turbine secondhand for £5,000-6,000 pounds. So the guys over at Jet Art Aviation and those guys would probably sell us something quite happily.
If only you had access to a Harrier or something, we could chuck one in a Harrier.
But what if these aircraft crash and people die?
I mean, if we can put
that Hindenburg moment
and throw it full of drone bits, and people would love that. Will it crash? The drama of will it crash? I mean, obviously the end might be a little bit disappointing as the thing makes a normal touchdown, but we can then do a typical Mythbusters and say, well, how big does a thing have to be before an airliner can crash, and just keep going until we can destroy it? I mean,
But unfortunately, in some ways, it would probably be only via the miracle of Mythbusters science that the general public believed whatever
Maybe
was
that's
saying. That is probably what it would take. Is that sort
we
of
need to write to Adam Savage and ask him if he'll actually, myth or truth. What happens if you fire a drone at a jet? By the way, a drone that's still in the shape of a drone at an actual jet.
Well, he did spend $250,000 building a super suit, didn't he? So he's got the cash.
Got the cash.
They should have got an airliner and scrunched it into a ball and fired it out of a cannon at the drone using a pin rubber bullet.
It would have been a better impact. But do you know what? I agree with Philip. I'm a big believer in the power of the positive voice. Yeah. But I think one of the big challenges there is we're not Horizon. We could have the best documentary that we put together in the world, but it isn't going to be broadcast live on BBC Two to the same audience. So we might go viral. We might get hundreds of millions of views. You never know. But again, I think that's the challenge. It's not about complaining. It's about trying to make sure that the BBC think twice before doing another piece like this again. And no one's going to expect an apology out of the BBC. No one's going to expect a retraction. But the point is, you want to make it very difficult for an editor somewhere in the BBC and other organisations to commission a piece that's that unbiased and that unfactual before they do it again. That programme had one researcher. That surprises me, given the kind of comments that were being made, the kind of factual assertions in there that it's not if, it's when this kind of thing happens. That researcher, I think it was a lady, she must have been really busy for the whole duration of that.
We know where she sourced some of the footage. Some of the footage over central London was from a Canadian fellow who's moved back to Canadian, and they bought it off Shutterstock. But first of all, she tried to buy it hooky without going through Shutterstock. So it was taken. Some of the London footage was from a non-PFCO. So the BBC actually broke its own guidance rules on obtaining footage. Now, if you go to do a freedom of information request at the BBC, I should have written this down, but they've got it says if it's artistic, something and something else. There's three things criteria it can meet, and they won't give up any FOIA. Sorry?
Is it 3 C's? Is that the criteria?
3 C's. Oh yeah.
They seem to get away with doing that, right? And I think that's pretty bad. But I think I think one of the big things is, I don't know if you caught the media over there, but in the last couple of weeks, the BBC have been in pretty hot water for removing the free TV license for old age pensioners in the UK. I'm really sad that all old age pensioners aren't drone pilots at the moment as well, because that would have been a double whammy, and there'd probably been a lot more complaints going at the BBC. But I think we've got to. I think it does actually take a repeated effort from people who are involved in the business of drones, flying them professionally, building software, building drones, to remind people that report on drones that they've got to get it right. And let's be clear: no one is saying drones aren't risky, right? They can be risky. You can do silly things with them, but actually, the vast majority of people do not. You can do dangerous things with planes as well, and with cars, and with other pointy objects, and with guns. But aviation, let's remind everybody, right? Aviation was never about the elimination of risk. It was about mitigating risk. And somewhere along the line, when somebody, I don't know who it was, but somebody somewhere in the past has made a drone an aircraft, and therefore it is an aviation related asset because it goes in the sky clearly. We're now held to the same principles and the same safety standards, which is good, but it is ridiculous to assume that there can be no risk. There must be no risk, and because the fact that there is some risk, we must ban them. This is the rhetoric that we don't understand, because we don't seek the banning of other forms of transport, which will frankly do more damage.
Yeah, I think the problem is
the thing we also have to get across, and people need to be reminded at every turn, is every time you replace a manned operation with an unmanned operation, you reduce the risk to human life.
But then I think the other issue we have, or we're up against, is that it's the perceived aspect that actually this autonomous route of flying or whatever it is ultimately going to cost jobs. But the reality is you still need someone to monitor those. So it's actually, you got job creation as well. It's just a different form. It's just change. And that's probably what we're up against, is that people don't like change.
So I'd love to just kind of remind people, we did something called Operation Zenith. I don't want to plug it. If you want to know more about it, you can find out about it. But that was a demo about the future of automated flight, right? We did it at airport, and actually we did it the month before Gatwick happened, and we demonstrated the same scenario that actually happened at Gatwick. Ironically, it wasn't us that did Gatwick. Let's just be clear about that. But from our perspective, you would not believe the amount of people that were involved in doing an unmanned operation on that scale. 125 in total it took to fly 5 drones and 1 helicopter and 1 GA aircraft. So I think jobs are safe, certainly for the short and the medium term, right? But we are going to see, as with all automation, you're seeing factory robots starting to automate some of the jobs that previously skilled workers were doing, but those robots can come in and do them differently. Those workers, some of them will lose their jobs, and that's horrible. But that is progress. And it's not always kind to everyone, but a lot of those workers reskilled, and they now program the robots. They now train the robots. And we're still going to remember, the drones aren't going to autonomously fly around because drones autonomously decide that it's fun. Some human somewhere is going to want the drone to do something and make that happen. So just because we're automating that, the flight piece, we're not removing humans from needing to use drones. So I think that's another aspect.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to disappear. So
all right, mate.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you.
Let me have my little rant.
And congratulations on getting your FCC bit of paper for the HearLink.
Well, we've got the CE piece of paper. We have passed FCC, but we don't get that piece of paper until next week, apparently. So.
The CE bit of paper then.
We got the CE, which is actually, ironically, that's the really hard one to get. The FCC is the easy one. But, yeah. So we've been waiting on the FCC one. The CE one. But we actually just haven't bothered getting the other certificate delivered.
Is that China export?
Yeah, China export. That's right. All right, mate. Thanks. Look after yourself. All right. Cheers, Philip. Bye, mate. Bye.
Something that was mentioned actually that about the automation, there has also been quite a lot of negativity around the Tesla automated driving. Yes, it's had problems. Okay, it killed someone. But it is also interesting, that point as well, about automation. What level is that being used as a weapon here? Because we're not alone in seeing some negativity around that either.
Well, surely the big automation in our world, as it will be the Amazon drones, which are the people currently trying to seemingly buy the lower airspace. That's what it looks like. I don't know if you've noticed today, last one they were talking about HEMS helicopters landing and needing temporary danger areas around them. And today they were talking about, our medical HEMS helicopters protected enough, and the BMFA guy very correctly said the rules and regulations are already in place. We don't need anything new. You can already be prosecuted. There's plainly an agenda there somewhere. There's a helicopter-based BALPA agenda kicking off somewhere in the background. And Richard's put in our comments, automated equals autonomous.
No, not equals. The bang.
Not equals. Oh.
I think that's the important piece, right? You see in our industry, in the drone industry, a lot, you hear people talking about autonomy and autonomous systems and artificial intelligence. I think those things do more to sort of harm the reputation of the industry than they do to help it at the moment. Nobody wants an autonomous AI system providing air traffic control services for drones, because no one can explain how it makes its decisions, and therefore it is not a quantifiable risk. You want a highly automated system, i.e. it's executing the rules that clever humans over a period of time have tested and tested and tested in a known set of scenarios. You don't want an evolving system. And the clear corollary to that is you have a bunch of air traffic controllers who are highly skilled individuals today, all completely capable of acting however the hell they like, but they don't. They choose to operate to a known set of rules. They might make mistakes, and maybe an autonomous system that will definitely make mistakes, but maybe a highly automated system will get it wrong. But the point is, you need to be able to be predictable when managing traffic. So I think we should certainly make more of a campaign about trying to remove the words that actually flare up regulators when they think about it. We go to a regulator and say we're building an autonomous air navigation system, this is a scary aspect, right? If we're building a highly automated machine, this is a much more regulatable thing. So I think we just have to be careful with that kind of talk, effectively.
It was interesting today. Did anyone watch the second session?
Yeah.
Okay, so she was talking about the Chatham project.
Yes, Chatham. Yes.
Yeah.
Chatham and something else and something else.
Yeah, but she was also stated quite clearly the government objective and where. Well, if I was sitting on the inquiry, I'd be thinking, why am I sitting here? Because it's obviously all pretty much mapped out on the way they want to go and the route they want to take. And I think one of the members said something about, well, when are you going to publish this report? And then, or when was this going to come into effect? And they were saying by November. And they said, well, aren't you going to wait for us to publish our report and take that on board? To which she sort of went quiet for a bit. But the whole route where it wants to take on who is actually driving it, and the government is saying, well, we're happy to be driven by industry and where technology is going, but then that seems to be blocked by quite a number of people that are sitting on the panel and giving evidence to the inquiry.
Didn't you think that she kept saying where technology is going? You know, technology is moving so quickly. It's moving so fast. That was a great excuse, wasn't it? Because I mean, I can't really do anything about it.
It's moved again.
It will have completely changed.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a great get out line for anything that she didn't want to answer. I wasn't impressed with what she was saying.
So, but who is driving? Because she was very polished in what she was. Who is driving it? So, are people like Altitude Angel and other air designers and want to use different airspace driving the regulator to get permission, and then the regulator's going, well, hold on, we don't understand how we're going to give you permission on this because of this, this, and this. You know, what is the seed? What is driving it?
I'll weigh in a little bit and just say I think it's different in different countries for a start, and then you've got organizations within a country, typically the NAA, the National Aviation Authority of that country, it's got a say. Sometimes that say is more inherited from a wider body like EASA, the European Aviation Safety Agency. They will push down something that others can inherit. But at some point, some countries, I think, have kind of morphed it into something that they need it to be. And it's not always in the interests at all of the industry or those that want to use it, but it's more around trying to solve some political concern that they seem to have at the moment. So I think, without wanting to bash our very supportive CAA in the UK, the £16.50 registration scheme, for example, is clearly a bit of a backlash to, or a knee-jerk reaction rather, to some of the incidents that occurred most recently. Let's not mention Gatwick, anybody, because someone's got to be seen to doing something about it. And I think you made a point earlier, actually, Dylan. There's a really good point. It's £16.50, not because it's solving some other problem that we don't yet know about. It's £16.50 because that's the cost that the CIA are willing to pay for an incredibly basic registration system. There were companies that went in and offered that solution with bells and whistles and all other stuff for a lot less, some even for free, and yet we still ended up in the situation that we're in. So again, I think we've got to remember, we are talking about national interests, and there are forces at play there that aren't necessarily altruistic. I'm not trying to sound nefarious. I'm certainly saying, I'm trying to paint this as I see it and say, if you've got a lot of money to lobby, you're going to get your position put across. If you're in a position of privilege within an NAA somewhere, then you have a lot of opinion and you can skew what happens. And that's okay. We trust these people, right? We put them in these positions to make these decisions, but then we don't educate them. So again, I think it comes back to, we have to come up with a way as an industry of telling the regulator what is acceptable and what is not. But their job is to tell us what is safe and what is not. But it's a bit of a common misbelief, effectively, or a bit of a rumor that the aviation regulators know how to regulate what we're currently all trying to do. As a software company in aviation, we will go to the regulator, or we did years ago, go to the regulator and say, we want to do this. What is the standard that we have to satisfy? And the answer is, this is not how it works, right? You have to show us how this works, how you think it should work, and then we'll tell you if it's safe enough. So it's an unusual situation, right? Because that means you're fighting a moving bar in different countries. So I think we have to remember, regulators are fighting. They are naturally behind the curve. They have to be, right? Stuff happens, and then the industry pushes them forward, so they have to think. However, we can do more to try and educate them collectively on what the technology can do, what it can't do, what the risks actually are, and what we think as an industry that they should do. And I think I'll say this negatively about our industry: it is not good at speaking with a single voice. It is not good at saying, this is the standard that we want. At the moment, there are lots and lots and lots of commercial entities. Dylan, you mentioned there's lots of organizations springing up talking about drone use, etc. There are hundreds of UTM companies now. All of these companies are pushing their agenda. What we need to do is get out of the gold rush, where everyone's still trying to sell picks and shovels effectively, and get into the business of actually galvanizing the industry around a common framework. If we can do that, then we can all get out and fly more drones. We can all do more automated flying. We can all do whatever it is we want to do with drones in those locations that we want to do them in accordance with the regulations, because they will be fit for purpose. And this is the challenge we have. We have to come together. Ranto.
It's very good rant. Very, very good rant, Rich. But what's to do? What's to do? That from the comments, plainly everyone's pretty hacked off with what's happened in the last couple of weeks. And I think the only thing that can make it all better is for Bruce to give us some form of word of wisdom, some sort of summary, and 5 or 6 words that cut straight to the heart of the problem.
Glockenspiel. That's my word. Anyway, I think we can summarize the events pretty simply. First of all, talk of terrorists. In this case, the BBC could be defined as terrorists because they are using violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims, which is the definition of terrorism. So by producing this propaganda, the BBC has inflicted an act of terrorism on the public by terrifying them as to the risk associated with these drones. I think that should be censured by Parliament, the people who ultimately control the BBC. Also, the thing that we should take away also is that these pneumatic cannons, they should be licensed, and you should have to register them if you've got them. I don't know if you need to or not, but they look awfully dangerous. Imagine if you've got your plane there and a pneumatic cannon goes off, you lose your tailplane. It's no good at all. But the whole thing is, as was said, we need to fight back with a campaign of public awareness, education, and reposition ourselves as not being the bad guys, but being the good guys. We need to dispel the myths. I've been working on a video for quite some time showing what does a drone pilot actually see when they're flying their drone 20 meters away from you? Can they tell who you are? And are there little square boxes that identify you as a target or anything? And then go up on a hill here with a Nikon P1000 and show just what you really can do if you want to spy on people. And also, I've got my Outlaw 250 footage where I fly a drone straight into myself and I don't even die much. Things like that. We need to provide all that kind of contraposition to the public, and whether we do it by way of viral videos on YouTube or whether we get the likes of DJI involved to fund a media campaign. I mean, the other people are going to lose big bucks on this. Let's get them involved. They can start funding some stuff, even if it's advertising, because the one thing we've learned from the BBC thing is they will be so happy with the response they've got to this documentary because it's done everything they want. It's got eyeballs on screens. It's got people talking about the Horizon program. It is self-promotion. They don't have to be doing the right thing. They just have to be doing whatever it takes to get people talking and watching their programs. They've succeeded beyond their wildest expectations. Yeah, there's letters of complaint, but you can file those in the round bin without any problems at all. They don't seem to be held responsible to anybody, and it's worked extremely well for them. So the only contraposition we can take is to do the same to them but better, and come out with that positive message saying, look, and as I say, I have to say every time we replace a manned mission with an unmanned mission, we have the potential to save lives. So these drones are safe. They're not dangerous. They're safe. They're saving lives every day, because you look at the number of people that die in manned aviation incidents every day. If all aviation activities were unmanned, then the death toll will drop dramatically. So we've got to take the initiative. We've just got to get off our backsides and do this. by whatever means is necessary. I'm going to be doing it, and I encourage everyone else to do the same thing.
Well, I think I do think that we've gone well with companies standing up and saying, you know, having a pop at the BBC now. And
aren't you surprised though at the companies that haven't?
Well, who would that be now? I mean, are there many more? Well, the big
Parrot
one.
and Unique, you know, the two of them in it. Parrot and Unique, who are manufacturers, have said nothing.
What about Hobby King? What about Hobby
Yeah.
King? Hobby King, they should be doing a lot of apologising for lots of things.
Let's not forget also that from the public's point of view, they would expect DJI and these others to come back and say, oh, no, because they're simply trying to protect their commercial position. So that discounts the value of the message those companies are bringing. They would be expected to complain when they're painted in a bad light. So, it's just sour grapes from DJI and the others. So that complaining doesn't really gather much traction, I don't think. We've got to come back with the positive, the glow in the dark stuff.
Got to be both though, because you've got to be a researcher. And the next documentary that is a little bit worried that they get their facts right, because if they don't get the facts right, plenty of people are going to.
Facts. Have you seen the modern media? Facts are the smallest.
Oh yeah.
You're
right.
The money in the bank.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, Bruce.
I think it would be hard. To be fair, I think it would have been hard for any more to have been done by the industry as a whole. You know, most of the YouTube channels have said something about it in the sense of we've all had our say. You've had all of most of the big players involved say something. I think we've done what we can do, and the one voice thing is complex. We've got Facebook groups popping up that are sort of, you know, we're going to change the world, and they're beginning to die off a little bit now already. Let's just hope it ends. I think at this point we all need it to end for a few weeks so we can take stock of where we're at, because it's been brutal. You know, this is 4 weeks now. I think this has been going on where we've had something week on week on week. So let's just hope. Let's hope it ends for a bit, and we can get back to business as usual and take stock of where we're at, really.
Simon Dale in the comments mentions Jessups and Peter Jones, who claims to be the biggest importer of drones in the UK, and probably is. Yeah, you could. Well, before it's over, could Peter Jones have a word first?
That's the point. Did Drone Safe Register put anything out?
I did tweet them and say, "Are you going to say anything?" Interesting response if you look at my Twitter feed.
Where will we find that Twitter feed? Is that at iCopter?
That's it.
IKO. Well, however you say it, I don't know.
IKOPTA. That's it.
Oh, yeah, that's how you do it. That's how
the plug's in.
Yeah, there we are. I
had to get it in there.
Yeah. No. Of course. Look, we've gone well over the hour again. So I think we'd better draw a veil under this, because it has become a bit samey every week, just a random. But it's but I personally, well, yes, thanks, Richard, and for at least having a word, and thanks to everyone else that's had a word to them. I think it's made a difference this time. We've got to keep doing it. Now, has anyone else got anything else before we move along?
And next week on Drone and Sundry, how to weaponize your Phantom 4.
Oh God! Oh. Did you see the airspeeder accident?
Airspeeder accident? Oh yes.
That's quite an interesting one, to say the least.
Well, are you thinking it's interesting because you believe in the rumours as well that it's also only got a single IMU in it?
Well, me and Ian and another gentleman have done a bit of digging, and we had a good look around, and it basically looks to be a multi-wee based IMU using a 7-pound set of sensors. They're basically using a microcontroller with a set. Let's hope that's not what was inside it. Let's be clear. What's weird is if you looked on the Mirror website, there's footage of this thing flying around a field. What concerns me is this thing is the size of probably a lawnmower, is the easiest term, because they flew a smaller one. You know, there's no prop guards in place. There's nothing. There's crowds in the background. You can't see how many people there are, but there are people there. I'd love to know what sort of authorization was given for that, because no commercial operator would get away with a flight on that on a Phantom. It was an open air assembly of people. You would require a massive safety case. The rumors are it went very, very high and then popped itself into a field in many, many pieces.
And the other rumor is that they'd flown it and crashed it the night before
Yes.
Cobbled it together, and then did a demo in front of a crowd. And those very expensive line of helicopters that was there. That was what I was thinking, God, imagine if it smacked one of them.
It could have been horrific when you look at it, but it's
just think of the children.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, but let's hope it wasn't what we've seen. But yeah, it was quite a bad accident, and the AIB are involved as well, which is quite serious.
Absolutely. Well, that's kind of a schoolboy error they made, really, because it was on an airfield with an active airfield with those aircraft there. That meant they had to get involved. If they'd done that in the next field, they might have got away with that, but they didn't. So yeah, and it sounded like a classic. Has anyone actually seen the footage of the flyaway though? Because the only clips I've seen is that going back and forth.
Yeah. No, I don't think there's any footage of the fly itself. Did I also see footage of a rocket man falling over?
Yes, the rocket man did fall over. Also at Goodwood. Yes, that very famous chap, whoever else is flying it now. What are we flying? Links now? All right, I'll try and find you a link blue flyer. Goodness me, do you think we prepare or do anything? What do you think we actually do here? Goodness me. Yeah, I did write about it. Have you put it in? Have you?
I've put the Mirror article in that shows it flying, and there's one of yours as well, Gary. I haven't got.
Oh, good man. I'll go get that one and put that one in there because I feel I should. Yeah. And then that Rocket Man. Did you see any more footage of that Rocket Man other than from a different angle? Because it looks to me like he hit a wire.
Yeah, because he sort of went up off the blocks, didn't he? And he then going, and then it was and that was
so whoa, there's something to hit. Yeah. So that's not good days all around. And he's out exempt from aviation regulations because they don't quite know where to fit him in, and that's the issue there. So yeah, there you are. There's that speeder going off and upturn the AIB, and the man thing goes off with the crowd right next to him. He's taken off in the crowd.
The guy with the jets on his hands and feet?
Yeah, he goes on. AAOB, don't turn up.
That's the guy that did it outside? Was it TV Centre? And he kept flying over the safety barriers.
Yeah,
live on TV. That one.
Probably, yeah. Pretty amazing thing, isn't it? Because there's no speed control or anything. It's just a load of jets on your end. I mean, that's pretty cool.
It's proper Iron Man stuff, isn't it?
Proper Iron Man, yeah. And Eurocorps Aerial saying Richard Brown and Tony CA couldn't classify his aircraft, and there are no regs, exactly. But then that would be probably, if they were going to do anything, they'd say, well, it's the same as a hang glider or paraglider. That sort of size single. I can't remember the regs now. Part 102 or whatever it is. I can't remember what they are anyway.
Station Part 102.
Sorry, is that?
Oh, are you sure?
Is that Reading's 80s and 90s hits? Sports you every morning. Like, is it? What is your local? I can't remember your radio station there. Anyway, look, we're
national LBC. It used to be London's biggest conversation, but now it's leading Britain's conversation.
I see. The end of local radio. How terrible. And with that, very much a dilution of the topics. Before we go, is there any more for any more? Anyone else see anything else? Bruce looks like he's looking at his screen. No? All right, then. Going once, going twice. Dylan, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Ian, Bruce, Richard, as ever, thank you. Spot on as ever. Thank you very much. Dear viewer, see you again, 2100 GMT next week, when hopefully we'll have something more interesting and ranty to talk
about. No drone legislation, no regs. No.
Exactly, no. Let's get some nice, interesting, nerdy flying platforms.
It's only a matter of time.
It's only a matter of time. Just think of the children. Think of the children.
Oh, Slaughterbot. Got to watch
Slaughterbot. Yes, he told everyone to.
What a muppet.
Have you watched the Slaughterbot video? But Dylan,
Slaughter is just laughter with an S on the front.
There you go. But Dylan,
yes.
What's your quest in life? What do you normally? Let's see if we can get it on the end of one. You want to turn everybody into
drone flying cinematic gods.
There you go. That's what you want. Don't forget tune into his channel. Helicopter. There we are. Oh, look, he's already slaughtered that, but he's taken the head off that person. He must be a part of the drone team. There we go.
Harmless.
All right.
Harmless.
Have a wonderful week, everybody. Be safe if you're flying. See you 2100 GMT next week. Cheers, eh? Bye-bye.